Great. Good afternoon again. I'm Manav. I lead the financial services segment for Plug and Play across Asia Pacific. I'm wearing exactly same, so people can recognize me. So over the next 90 minutes, we have a lot of exciting stuff for you guys for the financial services segment, as you can see on the screen. So this segment for Plug and Play is one of the largest globally, if not by far the largest. We combine financial services and health because a lot of insurtechs are looking for healthcare startups. They're doing a lot more in the financing of healthcare related stuff. So we kind of put them together and we have a very fancy name for it. We call it Smart Money and Health. So over the next 90 minutes, you'll see a lot of interesting stuff like keynotes. We have a panel on corporates. We have a panel on the healthcare side of things. And then we also have a panel for startups. So since 2018, when we started this segment at Plug and Play Asia Pacific, we've done a lot with corporations and startups. Today we have 13 partners. We've done more than 50 events, sourced more than 200 startups, and done more than 250 deal flow sessions where we get startups to meet with corporates to lead to either investments or a proof of concept project. And since we started off as an investor, we are staying true to our fabric of that. And we've invested in 17 startups since we have been doing it in Asia Pacific. A lot of these startups are based in Singapore, and some of them are even here today. So if you guys get time, please go around to the startup booths and meet them. If there's any startup that you would like us to connect you to later, please let us know. So as we keep evolving in this space, we are very happy and glad to invite 3 new corporate partners into the vertical. First of them being Hitachi Payment Services, which is one of the leaders in the payment space in India and the larger APAC region. FWD Insurance, which is one of the large insurance firms in over 10 markets in Asia Pacific. And MetLife, which is a global in health and wellness and life related insurance firm. And since we are present at the edge of innovation in this space, we also like to bring forward different things that we are doing in this space. What was relevant maybe by the time we did the last summit might not be relevant today. Some of the trends that we are seeing, either from the corporate side, where we are getting them their interest for us to source startups, or on the funding side. One of them, and it's a big buzzword, everyone knows it, is generative AI, Web3 and blockchain, sustainable finance, ESG, and payments and money movement infra. So I won't go through all of these, but on the last one, I have a very important guest who I will invite on stage to talk about it and talk about the evolution of the payments space for India and the larger APAC region. Please join me in inviting Somil Vikamsi, MD and CEO of Cash Business for Hitachi Payment Services.
Thanks, Manav. We recently joined the Plug and Play bandwagon, and we are very proud to be associated with the Plug and Play. So thanks a lot for this opportunity. Before I, go to explain what is happening in payments, what are the evolutions, what are the trends, what are the innovations, I wanted to step back and check with you what comes to your mind what product or service offering comes to your mind when you hear about Hitachi. It's an open forum. Anybody? What comes to your mind? So I was with some colleagues yesterday, and then I said that Hitachi Payments is going to be doing the keynote speech, and for the financial services segment. They're like, is it like Hitachi's into financial services? And they're like, yeah. And I actually wanted to kind of explain to you what we really do. before we really get into the payments space. So, just ahead. So Hitachi broadly, Anuj, yeah, you can just put all the animations out. Thanks. Hitachi broadly is into 4 verticals. The first is the digital systems and services vertical. This vertical looks after data analytics, digital product, software development, financial services, one of the biggest segments within Hitachi. The second one is about green energy and mobility. This segment looks after energy solutions, railway systems, and e-mobility solutions. The third one is connective industries. This looks after building systems, escalators, elevators, moving sidewalks, healthcare systems, waste, and water solutions. And the last one is automotive systems. It looks after powertrains, motorcycle, chassis management. So broadly, Hitachi is a fairly huge conglomerate, roughly with around $75 billion plus of revenue, US dollars. Roughly, you can put roughly 320,000 employees worldwide. And that's the gamut of what we're talking about. The segment that I represent forms a part of this vertical, which is the digital services system and services vertical. Next slide. So broadly, the way Hitachi has grown over a period of years, has been a mix of both organic and inorganic growth. These are just some of the assets that Hitachi has bought over a period of time. And these are not all the assets. These are just representative. So 2014, they acquired Prism Payments, which is now called Hitachi Payments. That's where I represent. It was a deal value of roughly $250 million US dollars. Salair, 217, Ansaldo STS 218, ABB, the Power Grid Management Systems for $9.4 billion US dollars. JR Automation, Thales, and Global Logic. That's the latest acquisition that Hitachi has done for $9.6 billion US dollars. So, the growth journey for Hitachi has been a mix of both organically as well as inorganically growing. Next slide. Hitachi also has a very focused way of dealing with innovation, and that is where it believes that startups are the places where you really get the next set of innovation. And that's where Hitachi set up a fund in 2019. It was called the Hitachi Ventures Fund. There are 3 funds. The first 2 funds totaled up to $250 million US dollars, invested around roughly in 15 companies. The third fund that we have, is for $300 million US dollars and is going to be specifically focused on digital technologies. Next one. Coming to Hitachi Payments, we are a 15-year-old, and I would still call ourselves a startup. We are a 15-year-old startup. We focus on both cash as well as non-cash as digital-related solutions, provide services on ATMs, cash recycling machines, white label ATMs, ATM software platforms. On digital side, we do a lot of POS-related solutions, payment gateways, toll and transit, merchant service, card issuance. And that's the gamut in which we deal in. Just go behind. The vision that we set ourselves, is to be the largest and the most trusted payments and commerce solutions platform globally, enabling 1 billion transactions daily. That's 100x growth of what we've put ourselves for. And this growth is not going to come from a traditional BU business. This growth is going to come from solving for problems that don't exist today, solving for problems that really the startup ecosystem can think through, giving a home around them with Hitachi, and that's what our entire focus area is on. Talking about globally, what has happened globally is this whole fintech boom. It has created a lot of alternate payment modes. Traditionally payments used to be made in cash or in card. With the fintech boom that has opened, last 10 years, we've had alternate payment modes. We have cryptos, we have stable coins, we have CBDCs, wearables, gadgets, making payments. Alongside that, what has happened is that the fintechs have created this whole platform of super apps, platforms which can actually connect to other digital fintech platforms, thereby creating a completely different parallel ecosystem. And this has been really discomforting to the traditional players like the banks. So if you go into the next slide, this is a little dated, but 2015, 90% of the merchant acquiring share came in from the banks and the traditional players. And come to 2020, that fell to 66. And as I stand right now, it's roughly give and take 50%. So the banks, they have been losing the traditional share. There are these fintechs who really have the customer experience, the look and feel. They are the ones who are actually controlling the customer. And that's where banks have now been, or not now, they have started looking at actually collaborating, partnering, M&Aing with the fintechs. Now, that's the big shift that has happened in the last so many years. Talking about India, the country that I represent, just to give you a broad sense of what India is all about, it's the 5th largest economy in the world, $3.3 trillion in GDP. Roughly 91% of Indians are banked, 140 billion population, roughly 1 billion cards, 700 million smartphone users, second highest in the world after China, 90 billion real-time payments, roughly 46% of the global real-time payments happen in India. And lastly, 1.8 trillion plus payments which happen in digital form, which is P2P and P2M. Now that's the economics, or that's the statistics of this country. And within this statistics lies the problems that we need to solve for. Next slide. Now, broadly, if you see, India, unlike other geographies, is, fairly different. There are various parts to India. So there's a first part to India, which is just 1% of India's population, fairly comparatively high in GDP per capita, roughly has access to most of the payment modes, digital as well as cash-based payments modes, and roughly does 70% of their transactions in digital form because they have access to digital infrastructure, they have a digital education, smartphone penetration, and this what completely kind of resembles, I call as UAE. That's just 1% of India. If you just come down this pyramid, and that's where 80% of India stays. Now, this 80% of India actually is fairly low on per capita income. The payment modes that are available to them are also not very huge. The traditional assisted mode of payment modes, and they just do 5% of their transactions digitally. Now, this is the layer that is there to skim. This is the layer for which we need solutions, we need platforms, we need agile technologies. And this is where Hitachi is also looking to collaborate, co-partner, work with people who can think of problems that don't exist today and who can solve for problems that are going to come up tomorrow. Another interesting part about India, and I don't know if this is public knowledge, but this whole retail payments pie, that is the money that you make payment to merchants to buy anything. This pie, it shows from 2016. It has been an ever-growing pie. Even during the pandemic, even during COVID, this pie increased. So it was $1.2 trillion in 2016. In 2021, it came to $2.19 trillion, grew to 2.65 in the midst of pandemic, and eventually is projected to go to $6.5 trillion. So what we are looking out here is an economy severely underpenetrated, huge statistics to support it, growing despite whatever comes its way. And we have a whole parallel set of ecosystems. So, these are the ecosystems that we have. And UPI, which is roughly $639 billion in FY23, is projected to scale up to 5 times in FY28 to $3.18 trillion. Now, that's what the power of this nation is. Roughly 60% of the payments are in mobile, projected to go to 75% by FY27. So, with this whole rapid innovation that is happening in the fintech world, we believe that a lot has already been done, but to the under-penetration that I showed to you, to the gap that I showed to you that exists in the economy and in the country, there's a hell lot more to be done. And, I think the next answer to solving those problems is going to come up from the ecosystem that sits in this room or the ecosystem around this room as well. So what we're looking at is, we're looking to co-create the future of financial technologies and digital payments by partnering with the startup ecosystem. Yep, next slide. So you're looking at Hitachi to give access to capital, access to our commercial partnerships, collaborations, access to our customers, access to our testing environment, sandboxing, co-creating, mentor connects, and eventually fundraising support as well. There are six core areas that we've identified as our focus areas: cross-border payments, banking as a service, the core banking services, embedded finance, Web 3.0 CBDC, card issuance, and payment compliances. So what we are looking for is, organizations which have a strategic fit. There is this unsaid thing about Hitachi, they look for a lot of synergies whenever they look to make a strategic investment, So if the synergies are huge, that's a lot of excitement that we have. So you're looking for strategic fit. We're looking for organizations that have proven solutions. We're looking for geographic focus, because I'm told, solutions that work globally, they really work hard to work in India. So we're looking for some solutions that have global focus, and of course, early stage startup growth. So in the room, outside the room, people who are interested, innovate at Hitachi-payments.com. Looking forward to connecting with you. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, Sumil, for your interesting insights into Hitachi Group, Hitachi Payments, as well as the evolution of the space. Yeah. So at Plug and Play, we strive to work in innovation where we connect corporates and startups to co-create together, to either have products or services in the market which will help them stay ahead of competition, or just have an equity and an investor partnership where that can lead to more interesting conversations and other things happening. And on that note, like I mentioned earlier, we have 3 different interesting panels. The first one, which talks a lot about the topic changed. In Innovating Together, unleashing the power of corporate startup collaboration. For that, please join me in welcoming on stage Leila Yu, who's the head of partner success for Plug and Play, to introduce herself and the panel.
Thanks, Manav. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining us today at this very cool venue and on such a lovely day. So I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day with us. So it is my pleasure to be your moderator for our very first panel discussion for the financial services and health segment, which is Innovating Together, Unleashing the Power of Corporate Startup Collaboration. So I am very honored to be in the company of our panelists today. Now, they all represent companies that might be at a different stage of their innovation journey, and they might come from different industry sectors, but what they all have in common is that they're innovating and collaborating together with startups. So now I would like to invite our panelists on stage. Joining me today on stage, we have Mr. Tiu Hua, Senior Vice President, Health Innovation Delivery of Meraxis. And we have Mr. Ramesh Narayanaswamy, Chief Technology Officer of Aditya Birla Capital. And next, we have Next, we have Mr. Kunal Chatterjee, Head of Innovation Asia Pacific of Visa. And last but not least, we have Mr. Anuj Kosha, Chief Executive Officer, Digital Business of Hitachi Payment Services. Well, thank you again for joining us today. So the reason that we are having this discussion around unleashing the power of corporate startup collaboration is that we're seeing that almost every major corporation out there today has recognized the need for innovation to reinvent their core business and also explore new opportunities at scale. And they're all doing something about it. So what's interesting is that we've also noticed that they are taking slightly different approaches, although there are many similarities. So from venture investment, incubator or accelerator programs, and proof of concepts or pilots to strategic partnerships with startups, we're very lucky today that each of our panelists today will be able to speak to these different collaboration formats. So if you're also a company looking to innovate by collaborating with startups, how do you know what's the right form of collaboration for your company? And if you're a startup looking to work with a corporate, how should you approach it based on the corporate startup collaboration strategy? And that's why we're here today having this discussion. So with that, I want to start our panel with the very first question. So to all of our panelists, how are you currently working with startups? And what made you choose your way of collaboration? I will start with Kunal. I understand that Visa has been at the forefront of innovation, and you started your innovation center here back in 2016, and also launched your very first Asia Accelerator program about 3 years ago. So how is Visa currently leveraging your accelerator program in your collaboration with startups? And more importantly, why the accelerator?
Thanks. So firstly, thanks for the invite. It's great to be here, great to be in this setting. Visa is a brand that hopefully pretty much 9 out of 10 people in the audience will know. But as a company, we're about 16 years old. So we tend to think, or we like to think we're like a startup. But as with every large organization, that can come with its challenges around organization structures, scale, and so on. So when we think about innovation, we thought about how can we grow faster in the payments ecosystem and solve for the end user. And when you think about that, what we bring to the table is scale, is trust, is brand awareness, and so on. But sometimes when you think globally and consistent product delivery, what we tend to miss out is what's happening in the fringes. And that was the start of our innovation center and something we called as the accelerator program. And kind of to what Sumil earlier alluded to, the objectives of the programs are multifaceted, but primarily focuses on use cases that have not been scaled yet, but has promised to scale. So we started this accelerator program about 3 years ago. Our fundamental belief is, when the startup is working on this sort of concept, the product actually exists. And it aligns to the vision and the problem areas that we are focusing on. So then we enter into a sprint, into a POC development. We do the mentoring, we do the investments, we do the commercialization. So it's a very programmatic approach. And this is one of the many ways Visa sort of looks at when we think about collaborating with the external ecosystem. Because for us, everyone's a client, whether you're government, whether you're a consumer, whether you're a merchant, or whether you're a startup itself.
Thanks, Kunal. And over to you, Anuj. Also very similarly in the payments industry, it's quite interesting to see that Hitachi Payment Services has chosen a slightly different approach where you actually have a setup of in-house incubation hub. Along with externally, you're looking at strategic investments in startups, which is also a huge focus for the company. So could you share a little bit more about how did the company sort of come to this strategy and what are the key drivers behind it?
So see, people look at Hitachi as a technology company and white goods company like Sumil mentioned. For us, we want to look at completing the entire stack. We want to be seen as a products and platform company. And hence, we are looking at enhancing what we have and build the entire stack so that our customers, which are largely financial institutions, they don't have to look out if they are looking for a particular product or a platform. In order to do so, there are two ways to go about it. Either we build everything in-house, which is actually not possible, or we work with the startup ecosystem where we pick up companies which are building fantastic stack and we partner with them, we invest in them, we collaborate with them, which helps us completing our stack and also, in turn, stay ahead of the curve. So we want to be right up there in terms of all the new trends that are out there. And as a large company, obviously you miss out on certain things, because you are too busy in your day-to-day stuff. But then this is a way to really be right there, out there in the market, looking at newer things and partnering with the startup.
Thanks so much, Anuj. So now I'd like to hear from also equally a large company with probably the longest history on stage, Ramesh. Aditya Birla Capital being a part of, a multinational conglomerate that has been around for almost 160 years now. What's your innovation journey been so far? How are you working with startups and what are the reasons behind it?
Thanks. And I think for us, it's quite complex, but we do it well. So if you take the group itself, group is large, right? We do from cement to aluminium to telco to capital to building to jewelry to fashion. So we really have to look at ideas everywhere because it's a fairly complex problem to solve. Because sometimes we see the retail world, there is only one customer, right? And how do we take that one customer who's going to have that whole experience? And if you take capital for a second, capital itself is a small conglomerate in itself. So we do digital lending, retail lending, health insurance, life insurance, asset management, insurance broking. We do everything. And we have got 6 different regulators or 5 different regulators regulating us, right? So they're very clear in what they want to do. So for us, really, we have to work with startups. We have to work with technology companies. We have to even sometimes work with small boutique consulting firms who can help us to stitch solution. That's number one. Second is how do we get that single customer view? Sometimes it's very easy, but it's a very difficult thing to execute. So we have moved our strategy slightly different. Previously, we used to do, sign up a contract, do a project, get them in. But going from this year, we have launched a program called as Infinite. So when they came up with the name, I asked why Infinite. Then they said, oh, it is innovation, finance, and technology. I said, not bad. I thought someone should have done it before, not that we have. So I was surprised. So me and our head of digital run this program. So we also want to take positions. We want to also be part of the companies. Even sometimes if that solution is not going to be immediately useful for us, and we are seeing that whether can we sit on the boards. And I mean, you have seen what India is, right? I don't need to say, right? And it's if you can't scale, there's no chance that anything can happen in India, right? I mean, I was, take 30 seconds more. I was talking to a startup. The idea was kind of average. I said, seriously, he said, sir, don't worry, 10 million people will download. Okay, now that's correct, right? I mean, to get a 10 million download in India is actually nothing, right? Which, you can't do it in Singapore. So very keen and looking forward to working with at least some of you. And thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you so much, Ramesh. So speaking of interesting program names, we actually have been working with Meraxis as well on the Meraxis Translator program. So now I do want to hear from Chirhua, probably being the youngest company on stage as well. So Meraxis did start off as a biotech startup here back in 2014, and you have gone through quite a journey to where you are right now. So having been on the other side yourself, how has it influenced your current strategy of working with startups?
Yeah, so thanks Plug and Play for the invitation, first of all. And being the youngest company, I think we are at around at 8 years old. So probably I would say that we are now at the still at primary school stage, right? When we talk about startup and companies. So, but however, Meraxis is pretty excited because being a biotech company, our goal here is really looking into healthcare. And we had been developing using our proprietary microRNA technology, doing a lot of diagnostic solution, trying to get into this thing where we call a multi-cancer early detection test. This is the goal that we are pushing for, and we hope that we can do something much more better for the mankind by introducing or getting into what the globally everybody, the healthcare industry is trying to look into in preventive health. So on this note, we have also kind of developed a lot of our platforms where we have R&D capabilities, we have diagnostic laboratories, we also have a medical center. So with all these technology, this kind of so-called facilities that we have built, this kind of infrastructure, we have developed such a kind of platform. And on that note itself, we will want to really open it up for a lot of our startups in the ecosystem to benefit from it. And like what other panelists has been trying to say too, is that really trying to see that since we have worked through this pathway, we have developed such a kind of test. We want all our startup to work with us, integrate our services together so that we can reach out to the market as a whole, right? Not as a standalone individual. Yeah. So this is what we are trying to do. And the translator program, like what we have working with Plug and Play, enables this outcome.
Thank you very much to all of you. So my next question for you is that, with the respective strategies you've undertaken, what are the key benefits and challenges for your company or your personal experience associated with, the chosen startup collaboration format, be it the accelerated incubator investments or strategic partnerships that you have been working with startups on? So maybe I will start with Ramesh this time. As you also briefly mentioned earlier on, like one of the biggest challenges is scaling and faced by the startups. So how is Aditya Birla helping these startups through your programs, through your investments?
So I think when it comes to financial services, it is very important to understand end-to-end. Okay? Typically, a fintech or a startup solves a very small problem very well. Okay, but that's not enough, right? So if you're doing a lending journey, if it does not know how collections happen, actually you can't build a lending journey, right? So that's really where we bring in that kind of knowledge, how to show that end-to-end, so that small problem is well resolved, so that we give that expertise, which is very important. That's number one. Second, I think being in India, I think it is scale, right? I mean, as I said, someone came to me and said, I don't know how many of you know the Indian number system. So they came and said that, they were complaining about my team. Oh, we asked data for a POC, they did not give. I said, how much did you ask? They said, no, we asked 40 lakhs. So they gave us 40 lakhs. I said, how much you asked? 4 crores. I said, 40 lakhs is 4 million, 4 crores is 40 million. I said, you're asking that much for doing a POC. I said, what are the total data set? 400 million, right? And I have to solve this entire thing of setting up infrastructure in 3 days for doing a POC, because if you don't understand that, it's very tough. So I think the corporates have got so much of knowledge. Where it becomes a bit tricky is that speed of execution, and that's why we want to work with people. And a very different way of solving a problem. Okay, is it solved it differently elsewhere, outside of industry? I always go and look for how problems are solved outside of industry, right? So I think these are the 2-3 things which we will do. If you do scale well, solve that problem well, and I think bring in all the new innovations, I think we've got a fantastic opportunity on hand.
Thanks a lot. And over to you, Chihua. As I understand that you're working very, very closely with the startups that are a part of your program to help them navigate uncertainties, launching into new markets, for example. So what are the main benefits and challenges you face along the way?
Yep. So very interestingly here is that when we get our startup or working with startup on board, we are really going into the market, right? Seriously, using, if Meraxis, we had been knowing what the diagnostic world are looking for. But however, when we step into healthcare, the broader areas of healthcare, that include wellness. And when you into wellness, there is also another demand of such kind of markets out there. So when we rope into looking into preventive health as a broad base as a whole, with other technologies or other products that's coming in, integrated with our Meraxis solution, we found that there is seriously quite a number of challenges because some of the needs may be different. It has changed. So with that, you must be able to pivot together with us, right? So being flexible, able to work towards together, I think, and approach the market, that is very much crucial. The next thing here is that Meraxis has also grown, and regionalization is one of the very important aspect where startup always find it's very difficult to approach different kinds of markets, especially at different countries. So with the opportunity that Meraxis has already went into our different countries, we are able to share our experience and bring them to the correct stakeholder when we approach different market. Yep.
Thank you. And over to you, Kunal. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So I want to re-emphasize what's already been said because the nuances are same. The one or two elements I would add is, we work with a lot of fintechs. We work with a lot of founders. I mentor a lot of them. A lot of the founders sort of are very absorbed, and rightly so, in their own ideas. So the way to sort of pivot the idea to sort of how it can get scale when working with corporates, to kind of what Ramesh was alluding to, is also a nuance that we should be comfortable with. Because there's a reason why the startup exists. There is a problem that's being solved for. But then how does that same solution apply to multi-market? Because there are different nuances, different technologies that require different sort of thinking and integration. That is a different lens that's been part of my learning journey as we think about the accelerator program and how we sort of work together in this.
Anuj?
So very similar thought. Most of the startups are very passionate about the idea. But, eventually the idea has to be taken to the market in a very commercial manner and then scaling it up. India is all about, building everything to population scale, and that is what we are good at. So, taking that idea to the market, to the right customer, solving the right problem, making money at the end of the day. And that's what Hitachi also brings on the table when we plan to collaborate with everyone. We are looking at opening up the entire office in terms of, experts in the finance team, experts in the business finance team. We have the best product guys within Hitachi. We have technology team. We have a sandboxing environment. So, and obviously at the end of the day, we have the right set of customers as well. So that's how we plan to counter this challenge, wherein, we take the idea to the end goal, which is beneficial for all.
Yeah, definitely resonate with that. Thank you. So my next question, on the note of you mentioning the different types of resources and capabilities you've built in-house, then what kind of, I would say, competencies or capabilities you're looking for in the startup partners that you would like to collaborate with? So that brings me to my next question, which is how do you identify promising startups to collaborate with? Just maybe name the top 3 key factors of consideration. So maybe we'll start with you, Anuj. Yeah.
So as a starting point, we have identified certain areas in which we want to look at startups. So that is the first thing that we've totally put in place in terms of what are those 5-6 areas in which we want to scout for startups. And to name a few, embedded finance is one, banking as a service, CBDC, some of these areas. And then we shortlist startups on the basis of the idea that they have, the problem they are solving for, the founding team. It is one of the most important aspects for us. And what are their plans in terms of, the business plan and go-to-market strategy. So these are some of the things that we look at before we look at making an investment or collaborating with startups.
All right. And what about Ramesh?
I think for us, specific industry-wise, I think we are looking on the insurance side, on any financial distribution. I think that is very key, to achieve, to take India to the next level, because otherwise it will be a challenge. And same thing is on embedded finance. Right? How can we use the different products we have in different life cycle of the customer, and also, in the supply chain itself? That would be number one. The second, I would say is that I would really urge people to take a long term, not just I'm going to do a company for 2-3 years and then I'm going to sell it off and move. So we really see how it is long term, and we also try to find out in long term how does the sales strategy work. because ultimately the solution has to be sold to multiple parties. And I think if you see, that is one place where little innovation has happened. If you see technology sales, it happens in the same way as how it happened 25 years back. So we really look for people are they thinking differently as to how they will sell, how they will price, at least on paper, because I think that's very important. Because I think that area needs to be looked at. A third would be talent, right? Talent, especially who can do it at speed. Okay, and bear in mind, in financial services, there is nothing called as fail fast. You have to get it right the first time. The regulators don't like if you make a mistake, right? So that is very important, because people can't, because it is also very prescriptive in terms of where you can't go wrong is actually told very clearly to us. So you can't fail it, right? So that's why I tell people, just bear that in mind, because sometimes feel that, if you fail, financial services punishes a lot. It's a matter of licenses. If you make a mistake, we can't move. I think these are the three factors which I would say.
Thank you. And Cherhua?
For me, so what Miraxis was trying to do here is that the visions of going into preventive health, the goal of adoption in the healthcare system. So very much important that the startup that we are looking for must have the same vision that what Miraxis is going to do for. Because or else when we integrate the services together as a solution, you will find it very difficult on that. So this is one of the main key criteria. The other two criteria that we are looking for is really are willing to pivot with us, test the market together, because we learn together. That's the whole thing about it. And the third thing here is that, again, what we wanted to do here is to push for the greater needs of healthcare. So the product must be ready there, because or else it is not easy. If you are still developing, that's why when we launched our translator program, we did state that it is a bridge between your post-incubation ideation stage and as well as your post so-called accelerator growth stage, right? That is the bridge that we wanted to push, and you must be at the correct stage that we are looking for. Yep.
Thank you. And last but not least, Kunal?
Sure. So 3 things: growth stage startups who have a product in mind and are looking to scale. The accelerator program, how we have designed it is, we will bring you in, we will do through a selection process, through Plug and Play, who was our corporate innovation partner in this. We'll put you through a cycle whereby we'll do rapid POC development with a strategic market mentor. So if you're a startup based in China looking to go outside, we will make the China head your mentor in terms of how do you bring your business outside China as well, and including a business function head. So if you think about that, and if the POC is successful, we'll then get into MVP and commercialization. That itself brings the product and the solution market to life. Then it's also about investments. And since 3 years, we have done 10 POCs, we have done multiple commercialization projects, we have done investments. So it's about bringing that solution to scale. We've got 2 partners here, as a matter of fact. I think Dausher and Doxa, thanks to Plug and Play, they're here. Have a chat with them, take their references. We put out the challenge statements every year. Similar themes: embedded finance, Web3, small and medium enterprise enablement. So you'll notice the themes are pretty much the same, but the nuances will be with the type of corporates you choose to work with, the deployment cycles along with that. So very excited to be here and looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, so we're actually almost running out of time. So for our final question, in 30 seconds, what would be the one advice you give to startups who want to collaborate with you? We'll just maybe go from...
So stay innovative. I mean, that is the one and only thing that startups should do, because they can think out of the box. As large corporations, we are often bogged down by our quarter targets, regulations. Startups don't have to worry about those things. So that's the only advice I have.
I would say for the founders, don't forget the why, right? Because when you tend to work with large corporates, large partners, you get questioned a lot, and then some pivots might have to be done. But there's that essential reason why you started the company, why you thought of the solutions. So to stay in that problem and keep that focus in, because I've seen a lot of startups also jump straight to the solution and forgetting the problem statement, because the problem statement also might change. So stay in the why and remember that why.
I think I would say just get that alignment because sometimes we have to use the right words to say that, look, we are aligned. You don't need to make a fundamental change. And I've seen people sticking to the way how they communicate. And we as corporates saying, no, that doesn't work, right? Because this large corporation has ambitions, mission statement, vision. We've got a lot of things. You need to get that alignment. It's very easy. It's English, right? But sometimes people forget to do that. And then that creates a problem. Second is speed, right? And I think it is also telling what you need from the corporates to make it happen. See, the corporates really have got enormous amount of resources at their disposal. That's never a problem for us, right? Sometimes people don't come and ask the right thing, and then we also go into a tailspin and confuse everyone. I think these two things should really help working with us.
Okay, for me, very fast one. I only have 10 seconds, I think, left. Simple, embrace innovation, seize opportunity, and learn mistake. That's it. Thanks.
All right, on that note, we've come to the end of our panel discussion. Thank you to all of our panelists again and to all of you in the audience for listening in. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. All right, I just want to quickly introduce our next panel. So for our next panel, we'll actually dive into the topic of digital healthcare, which has emerged as a transformative force in the healthcare industry. I'd like to invite on stage your next moderator, Anna Kokaku, APAC Commercial Lead, Digital Health for Gallant Growth.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Leila. Interesting panel. Well done, by the way. Thank you for your input also to the previous panelists. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you in advance for your curiosity also for the next session, and we hope to deliver on that promise. The next topic we are going to dissect is in digital health and why we have chosen digital health, apart from my background and the fact that I represent a company specialized in digital health, but because digital health is indeed one of the leading drivers in transforming healthcare globally. In fact, digital health startups raised basically $30 billion in 2022, sorry. Only 6 billion of those were concentrated here in Asia Pacific. The money, indeed, without considering the exits, and which would bring the value to 60 billion in digital health in terms of money flow, it was spread basically across the different therapeutic areas, and with the top 5 being cardiovascular diseases, oncology, neurology, diabetes, and mental health. The rest of therapeutic areas, so disease areas, is in the lower side of the list. And today, with our panelists, who I have the honor to introduce in a bit, we are going to indeed focus on that lower portion of the ranking, because we are going to talk about women's health and men's health. So quite a specific, let's say, sex-specific disease areas. So without any further ado, let me introduce my esteemed panelists. Dr. Yudhara Kula-Ratne, CEO of eHealth. Please welcome me on stage. Sasya Wardani, CEO and founder of Wangmam. Thank you. Go ahead. Daniel Ting, Chief Digital and Data Officer, Head AI and Digital Innovation of the Singapore National Eye Center. And Susan Hanna, Director of Operational Excellence and Strategic Initiatives of Organon in Asia Pacific. Thank you so much for joining me today in the panel. Okay, I want to stay that side. Okay, let's open the conversation. And I'm going to start with Susan. Okay, so we talked a bit about the innovation ecosystem, lots of money flowing. Still, it is a difficult environment because also in previous cases, we've talked about a decline when it comes to funding in digital health innovation. Without talking about the investment landscape, you represent a pharma company. How would you define the role of a pharma company, so of a corporate in such an environment?
Yeah, so maybe let me put that into a little bit of context. So Organon is a women's health company. We spun out of MSD about 2 years ago, so I call us a big startup, a $6 billion startup. For those of us that have been in startups, we know that's a lot of money. I came from a startup before as well, so I understand that. And in women's health, we're one of the few companies that actually at this scale is completely focused on women's health. And you guys may or may not know that only 4% of R&D investments in health are made specifically for women. So it's actually a very, very small percentage that goes there. When you ask what is it, and sorry, in Organon, we're investing, right? We're investing very heavily. We've made a number of acquisitions already, mainly in biotech. So we've done things like osteoporosis, endometriosis, areas of I'll say vaginal disease or disorders, etc. So we've done quite a bit so far, a number of acquisitions. And also in medtech, we've done a couple of medtech acquisitions. What can pharma do to help? I think there's a number of areas that we can do. So for instance, one of the ways that we can help, I believe, startups overall, right, and the ecosystem is we raise awareness of the issues. We not only raise awareness of the issues, startups may or may not realize as corporations, we have a specific view of that overall industry landscape. We really know the ins and outs of it and what needs to be done to avoid trouble. I think one of our former panelists said, there's bright red lines of where you want to cross, where you want to keep yourself out of jail. We can help startups with that, so to speak. We also help with funding. So we actually do fund pilots. We'll fund other types of activities as an industry. And I think that overall we can make our resources available to the startups in terms of, specifically in pharma, it's things like scientific advice, medical advice, etc., because we really have a global distribution chain and global touch points. We understand the regulations within various countries. So we have that kind of knowledge that brings to bear for startups that are looking to enter into a given space.
Thank you for that. We're gonna take the discussion a bit further also at the end of it. But let me expand a bit by introducing into the conversation another stakeholder of, let's say, the innovation landscape and ecosystem. Daniel, you represent a public institution, and then probably you can share a bit more about your role. But usually, as public institutions are seen, they help to, let's say, standardize and humanize the adoption of these innovative solutions. Based on your experience, and if I'm not wrong, it has been both in Singapore and US, what are some of the case studies that you have seen in, indeed, the role of public institutions in the ecosystem?
Yeah, thanks. And I think this is something that's quite close to my heart. We talked about the translation of technology into the real-world settings and how do we actually implement it right in the clinical settings. I think we see many startups actually trying to cross the valley of death, right? And in fact, many actually startups fail in the process of trying to translate the technology into healthcare settings. As you know, like the regulations in healthcare is super strict. It relates to patient safety, outcome, and not only that, like, you coming from like a clinical space, a lot of the startups are being like coming from the academic and or scientific area with no business experience is number one. Second is and the cost, the ROIs, return on investment, and many of these like aspects we see the challenge from the startups, the developers trying to bring their technology into the real world settings. And for the last 3 to 4 years, coming from ophthalmology space, like not being the top 5 most popular specialties, kudos to the 3 the US FDA approved AI technology so far. And in fact, one of the first, the American Medical Association, the AMA billing code comes from ophthalmology for actually allowing the screening companies like the AI technology company to actually build the Medicare system in the United States. So I think this is one of the things that, in fact, the spin-off, the developer is a close friend of mine, Michael Abramoff. He actually is a academic clinician and who actually developed the deep learning base, the screening technology using retinal imaging to screen for patients with diabetic eye problems. So I mean, I actually seen his like the lifelong career, starting from a free deep learning era all the way to deep learning era over the last 15 years. I mean, this is how long he was actually trying to do the specific technology, bringing the solutions to the real world settings, turning from academic clinicians to like a business. Now he's actually running the company himself. So I mean, this is one of the successful examples that I see. Not being someone the one of the top 5 specialty, but still able to actually bring the solutions from the bedside to the bench to the bedside. I think this is something that I would actually really commend him about. Yeah. So this is one of the one of the very successful. In fact, he actually raised quite a few series. He's currently in Series B or Series C now. Yeah. And he just recently raised another I think $100 million. And now from ophthalmology, he started to actually expand into the dermatology space and ENT space. So he actually renamed the company from IDX to Diagnostics now. So yeah. So I mean, I'm actually excited to actually follow his progress. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Personally, privately, probably I can ask you, are you involved in that transformation, in his success story? But yeah, keep the answer there. Let me continue with our panelists, because now the conversation becomes even more about the frontliners of digital health innovation, because we have 2 startups representing women's health and men's health. Sastia, you're a founder and a woman. What led you to... Yeah, let's start with the pillars. What led you to found A Wrong Mom? Walk us through a bit your journey, the pain points your venture is solving, and your motivation also.
All right. So us as a woman, we're lucky enough to have this very special part of our body, like the maker of life, which was the ovaries. But unfortunately, the ovaries are also the fastest aging organs in a human body, 2.5 times faster than any other tissues, which also kind of define our biological clock, right? So especially like living in Southeast Asia, my whole life, what me and my friends know was by the time, like before we turn 30s, we should already be married and have kids, multiple, not only one, but multiple kids. And probably our parents would be like, start asking us questions. Oh, when are you going to get married? By the time we graduate from university. Right. As much as we don't like it, they're actually onto something. Taking into consideration, like building a family, career, personal growth, for us women, it is as if we have to choose only one thing to do something meaningful in our life before our biological clocks runs out. So with Ruang Mom, like the startup that I'm building right now, is we focus on like the female health, reproductions, and fertility. We wanna liberate like reproductive care for women, especially right now in Indonesia and eventually in Southeast Asia. We wanna give a woman options on what they want to do with their life. So we try to become like bridging the gap to first education and information about reproductive health and fertility for women in Southeast Asia, by also creating a whole ecosystem on like for this reproduction care, so that women can finally achieve what they want to do with their life. What we see, it is a very important aspect, because especially in like fertility health and reproduction health, it's not something that is very specific only to women. Like generally in like for fertility and reproduction health, actually related for women is related to also their general health and well-being. So when we talk about women's health, women's fertility health, we're not only talking about a very personal thing, but also a society as a whole. It is predicted that in 2026, which is very near in future, fertility market would hit $41 billion in B. It is indeed a very huge market, but at the same time, it also shows the problem is huge. And at the same time, because of this very like huge gap in like the information and access for all of these women, we already see that is hurting economies, countries, especially in developed countries. And in 2035, it is predicted that there will be around 1 million women hitting menopause, which means also affecting the whole global economy by 150 billion, which is very, very huge. So with Rongmam, we are actually trying to minimize this gap. We are going into like prevention and eventually for the longevity of like a woman's reproduction and fertility health.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And also a bit of general knowledge on women's health. Curious, but again, one of the open questions for Susan, what will Organon do to attack that 41 billion? And let's keep it open. Dr. Udara, you are founder of Men's Health Company. Again, what is the value proposition of He-Health, which is also quite expressive in the name?
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Plug and Play, for inviting. Fun fact, actually, men's health, when it comes to funding, is even underrepresented than female health.
Correct. And I have some facts on that. Please go ahead.
My background is from academia. Me and Daniel used to be colleagues at the same institute. But like what he said, after COVID, I realized the physicians or clinicians need to be more bold in certain areas. And I saw the gap, so I stepped out to find He-Health. He-Health is actually about 4 years old. We are commercially available 1 year, so I think we are the youngest startup here. But we have made them significant differences around the world. I'll tell a little bit about boring part of it and a little bit of fun part of it. Boring part is we are a digital diagnostic company. What do you mean by digital diagnostic is we use digital means, data points, pictures, sound clips, and physically is doctors, blood test, PCR. So we use digital means to diagnose or screen diseases. Why you need a digital diagnosis or screening when we have amazing technologies developing, like our ex-colleague Mirexus. So whatever these technologies, digital is the best means for accessibility and scaling. Everybody have a phone, like India have 1 billion phones. And what if we can diagnose diseases from the phone itself? That's what we do. And our focus is on sexually transmitted diseases. There are, again, surprising, there are about 800 million STDs at this moment. It's bigger than COVID. Impact is bigger, but hardly anybody talks. That's what motivates me to step out of the academia. Okay, those are the boring part. The fun part is we can actually tell diseases, sexually transmitted diseases, if they are visually recognizable by looking at men's penis. In Gen Z's word, we say dick pic. A lot of people ask, sorry, I didn't hear. Yeah, you heard it right. That's what we do, but the vision is much, much bigger. I'll touch a little bit on the future part later, but it's really appreciative bringing these topics into the main stage where the attention is very little. And infectious disease is actually one of the very rare thing. COVID hits hard, but still people not willing to invest money, but at least table is turning. So we are here. Happy to talk more. Thanks, Anna.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Conversation has become very personal. Changing the topic to corporates. Thinking about the future in this case, how do you again see the role of corporates evolve in the future to leverage even more external innovation? And the second portion of the question is, what suggestions for the ventures?
I think it's something that's been touched on quite a bit, right, in this conference, is all about the ecosystem. And when we think about corporate innovation, we think about innovation overall. I think somebody said yesterday, we were at one of the sessions, and they were saying that it's getting harder to innovate, which means that you have to become very good at bringing together diverse perspectives in a framework and in a structured way that enables you to really understand where the opportunities are and how to solve for those. I think at the same time, the complexity is increasing, right? So the complexity of our environment is not getting any simpler. Between all the different rules and regulations, between the finance side, the health side, the ESG side, it becomes very challenging to navigate and really figure out how you scale. So I think one of the important roles of corporates is really to nurture that ecosystem. I don't think we can just leave it up to governments. I think if what we care about is really the end customer, right? And what's going to be good for them, then I think that those with more power, which tend to be the corporates and more capital, really have to step in and figure out how do we really enable that ecosystem? How do we lower the barriers to sharing information? How do we lower the barriers to cooperation? How do we make things faster, not harder? So I think that's one of the important roles.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Now let's see a bit, again, talking about the future. Same question to you both. How do you vision the future for your own companies based on a value proposition? Where would you like to be in 5 years, at least your ventures?
I personally feel very optimistic about specifically in like female health, because as far as we talk about, like for as long as we talk about health, surprisingly only in 2016 that is becoming mandatory to test also on the female sex, and only in 2023, which is this year, that it is available like for also women in Southeast Asia to even do egg freezing, which kind of give us a little bit more option as well. And so the way we see it, like we're very much open and look further into like collaborating with any players in the basically in the industries, trying to do like what our main visions are doing, which is to give all of this access to informations and educations to basically female, like a woman in Southeast Asia. And right now, what we're like with the visions of doing that, we are actually building an on-hand platform, which is our app. Try to make it available for everyone, and make it very personalized, which is on their devices, on their phone. We use data-driven analysis, so we collect their conditions, like women's condition daily, and try to give them like a suggestions, like a personalized suggestion on what they can do and what is the conditions of their body related to their reproduction and fertility health. And at the same time, we want to build like a full ecosystem for all this women health. So not only that is available on the tech, instead we want to use the whole tech, like our app, to understand the problems better and able to give them like a really complete solutions. So now we are also like building our R&D team, and eventually we will come out with a home test kits as well as like a complementary like supplements for all of these women to actually manage their whole fertility and reproduction health. And with like our experience of like dealing with Indonesia, which is a very huge and also very diverse market, where everybody has although the same problems, but a different approach on how to tackle and grasp into all this information the way they do. We definitely look further into offering our services and consultations as well as like our support to go beyond Indonesia and the closest with the similar diversity, Southeast Asia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Over to you.
I have 1 minute. I'll try to make it fast. I mean, we are more excited than anybody else of creating this future. It is truly changing times. AI is truly changing. A lot of questions people even couldn't wrap around their head how the AI can do this kind of things. But it's changing. I'll paint a little bit of picture of what we do and what we are trying to do and how the future will look like. Imagine a future where anybody, anyone, despite of color, religion, ethnicity, geolocation, and how much money they have, they can use their digital services in the phone to understand their health. And especially the taboo topics like sexual health, which you are not comfortable to talk to a physician. We can do these things digitally, most likely comparable to a doctor or maybe even better than a doctor, because the data points can do lots of magic. That's the future we are looking at. But looking slightly beyond that, we can actually apply some of these data points to other diseases, understanding your health as a whole. Me as a diagnostician, that's how our future looks like. Again, time is against me. Happy to talk anybody who wants to know, but I'll pass it to Anna.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry to interrupt that. However, our speakers and panelists are still part of the audience for at least 30 minutes, so feel free to continue the conversation with them for any specific questions you might have. We are running out of time, and I need to invite the other panelists. Thank you so much for joining me today in this brief panel. Please continue and mingle with the audience. I need to invite Ash Padbidri to focus on explaining the challenges of innovation with corporates. So thank you so much, and please give her a round of applauses.
Thank you very much, Anne. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashwin, and I'm the program manager for financial services and health verticals here at Plug and Play. So, today we've heard a lot about, corporate startup collaboration and open innovation, but we've really been looking at it from a strategic perspective. I think we're at a really interesting inflection point in open innovation where we really need to understand how we can execute POCs better and really streamline those processes. So with that, the focus of the panel here today is really going to be how can we streamline those processes and really get tangible results from the POCs that we drive. So with that, I'd like to invite our panelists. First up, Fiona Simons, head of APAC at Steer. Fiona, please.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Joel Lee, co-founder and CEO of Product Labs. And last but not least, we have Byron Pei, founder and CEO of Daosha. So thank you very much for joining me today, everyone. So I think a great way to structure this discussion is really to go through chronologically what a POC looks like and what are some of the challenges that startups face. So let's really get into it at that first touch point. What do you think are the best channels that you can use to reach out to a corporate and the best way to really streamline those conversations? I think, Fiona, you can go first.
Yeah. Ashwin, that's a fabulous question and something that we struggle with every day, right? All of us at startups come with deep domain expertise. And this also means that we have fairly large networks, right? So we know, we understand the domain or the vertical, we understand the pain points, we understand not only who the stakeholders and executive sponsors will be, but we also understand their struggle. So not just what the pain point is, but why it's a pain point, right? And so, starting those conversations as a peer and an expert gives us inroads that we are privileged to have. I think, here's the thing. Know your space, right? Network incessantly, right? And make sure that you have the right people at the table. Stakeholders are not just the executive sponsors. They're not just the end users. They're the tech people. They're the finance people. They're every single person in that ecosystem that will allow you to launch, right? So that first conversation has to already include all those elements. You've got to do your homework, right? And you've got to be able to identify low-hanging fruit versus long-tailed opportunity.
I think I completely agree with you. So Byron, what about you at Daosha? What do you find is the best channels to explore?
All right. So first, thanks for having me. I'd like to make a self-introduction, if you mind. Daosha is e-commerce financial tech providers. We partner with e-commerce marketplaces, Amazon, Shopee, Meta. And on the other hand, we partner with the big banks, HSBC. We have served over 20K SME sellers and financed for over $500 million US. So to the question, I think you must have a sound solution. At the very first, you need to find an anchor customer to do the market validation, and then try your best to sell it to the biggest customer in the sector. For our experience, at very first, there are all kinds of SME financing fintechs. They do self-lending at first, but we are not. We help the banks. We enable the banks to do the lending. It's very hard. First, we connect with a small bank to do the validation, and then we onboarded the biggest bank in China, Bank of China, and that helped us to gain the credibility with Amazon. So they choose to partner with us. So we have a very good solution to sell it to the rest of the marketplaces. That's our, experience. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I think moving on the journey now, I'm sure all of the startups in the room can empathize with this. Corporations tend to be very, very big, and the person that you first reach out to, they might not be the right person. And conversations can be, derailed and, be kept on ice for quite a while. So, Joel, I think you might be able to speak to this quite well. How do you keep those conversations warm and make sure that you're speaking to the right stakeholders at a corporation?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. So I think a bit of context to set, because I think there's a different kind of strategy to employ for B2C, B2B, also enterprise tech companies. Over at ProDoorSteps, we are an insurtech company, very much in the enterprise space. What we do is we enable insurers to be able to underwrite and also price cyber risk. So we're in the space of cyber insurance. We do that across both personal and corporate lines, if you're familiar with the insurance space. So naturally, when we work with insurers, we are sort of like a B2B or B2B2C type of provider, and really in the enterprise tech space, right? So I think to your question, there are a couple of things that are probably important for us, right? So firstly, as we think about engagement and lead qualification, I think one of the methodologies that we use a lot is a methodology called MedPick, right? And really answering three main questions, right? What is the pain or what is the solution that you're trying to offer? Why you, for example? And lastly, why now, right? So this gives us a starting point when we enter any conversation with a corporate, especially the large ones, right? Because there are there are a whole host of vendors out there that can actually do something that's very similar to you, right? So really, why you, why now? These are sort of pertinent questions. The ways that we keep the conversations warm typically tend to employ a bit of consulting sort of methodologies where we try to not just sell a product, but try to work with you as a partner to perhaps even solve a problem that wasn't the original intent of the question, right? And we try to keep touch points between 3 to 5 days, maybe a week at most. And then as we go in and we hear, we try to spend more time being a bit slower to speak and quicker to listen, right? While we have this thing that we want to do, this whatever snazzy, sexy thing that we think that we're doing. But the real problem, for example, when we started in the corporate cyber insurance space, we thought that underwriting was a big challenge of cyber risk. It is. Maybe in the Western Hemisphere, but over here, we find that a lot of insurers are looking for lower hanging fruits, for example, sort of like cyber call centers, claims advisory, some things like that, right? Which to us is like really simple things that we could do, but yet that was their point of need that we wanted to try to meet them there. Yeah, so these are just some pointers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Fiona, similar sentiments?
Yeah, so I echo many of Joel's comments. We work in the same insurtech space. It's about understanding not just the client, not just the pain point, but how to solve for it in a manner that's efficient, effective, and affordable, right? So going back to a question, why you, there are 10 people in line that claim they can do the same thing. So is your differentiator speed? Is your differentiator scalability? Is your differentiator pricing? You can't ignore that. And how innovative are you willing to be? How much are you willing and able to put on the line in order to commit on an outcome, right?
Right. And what about you, Byron, on the fintech side? Similar sentiments?
Yeah, I think whoever the key stakeholder is, draw a big picture. Yeah. Use one sentence to draw his attention. How big, how to do, why me, right? Take Joshua as an example. I always said cross-border e-commerce is a $1.8 trillion market. and the financial needs is over 110 billion US dollars. You need to connect with the tech giants and the big banks to do that. So fortunately, we have already connected with Amazon, with HSBC. So let's talk how to create the value and make money of it.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think moving on that journey, the next big hurdle now, once the corporate's sold on the idea, is the contracting phase. So, there's a lot of back and forth. I know you're smiling, Fiona. There's a lot of back and forth between the corporates and the startups. And I think any startup here, or even corporates looking to the future for collaboration, I think it'd be great to color the perspective on what are some of the biggest challenges and how we can streamline that. I think we could start with you, Fiona.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Ash. Look, contracting is never quick, and it shouldn't be quick. Be wary if it's quick, right? It should be thoughtful. It should be clear, crystal clear about what the objectives are. I mean, whether you're contracting to do a small POC or whether you're contracting, for a 5-year program, the attention to detail is critical at all points. Don't cut corners there, right?
Right. And Byron, similar sentiments with the contracting phase?
Yeah, because we are one of the 7 startups to partner with Visa. Yeah, I saw some Visa member here. So it's a long process to do the negotiation, all the contract terms, all the IP protection. But in my opinion, you need to build all your IPs, your core capabilities. It's so easy to copy. It's, you need to spend years on building that. So the heart, your IP cannot be copied. They either on the contracting phases. So all the terms, all the contracts may be either for a startup, because when you are facing a big corporate, you don't have too much negotiation powers. So you only have to accept it. So protect yourself by, doing those things good. Yeah.
Thank you. And Joel, what about in the cybersecurity space? Is that an even longer process?
Yeah, so sales cycles can be fairly long. I think we're quite familiar with that. So I think what helps is really 2 main areas, right? So the first is really in compliance, right? So for example, if you're working with a European type, a large corporation, then GDPR is a big thing for them, right? If you're going to work with a US one, then obviously SOC 2, right? And the rest of the world kind of like maybe ISO 27001 or something like that. That helps, right? So we typically find that compliance is something that can be front-loaded. You could actually plan beforehand, so you don't need to wait till that happens and say, oh, I need to get ISO compliance, and it takes me 9 months. The second problem that we do see is probably in the area of being very single-threaded. So if your conversations with sort of corporates become a bit sort of like you're only talking to 1 or 2 stakeholders and it's not going to the rest of the team, which will be involved in the decision-making process, right? Whether it be legal, it be procurement, it be some BU, head. Then there probably is other things that you could do to try to get visibility into those guys. And the reason for that is really we're trying to front load as much as possible of the different stakeholders that could potentially be a showstopper to your entire contracting process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think now moving on to the most important part, the goal of a POC, at least from a startup's perspective, is really long-term collaboration and growing their business with that corporate partner. So what do you think are the key metrics that the startup should be looking at to measure from a POC that, they can take back and demonstrate to the key stakeholders that this was successful and, it should be continued? I think, Byron, you might be able to speak well about this.
All right. So I think the first, the successful one, POC is, after that, the corporates invest in you. So just a joke, but we have experience. We do a lot of POC with big companies, and after that, they are, send us some term sheet. So, but actually, what really matters is numbers of customers, GTVs, GMV, or revenue. There is a methodology called PRFQ from Amazon. Is when you decided to build a product, write a press release article about your product launch and FAQs, and send it to your potential customers to see their feedback. If their feedback is positive, then you might have successful POCs. Yeah. So, in the with us accelerator program, we are working with our team to co-designing some solutions for the banks. So at the very first, we reached some bank and payments companies and to check if they are interested. Their feedback is positive, so we are more confident that we will have a good POC. Yeah.
Thank you. And what about you, Joel? What are some of the metrics that you use to measure the success of a POC?
Yeah, so I think in startup world, we're quite familiar with metrics, but more investor type metrics, right? So when you work with corporates, I think the metrics need to change. It essentially needs to be a bit more others-centered, meaning to say what are they centered or concerned about, right? So really two main metrics I think that helped us so far. One is if the problem you're trying to solve usually falls into one of the three buckets of either you're trying to increase revenue, reduce costs, or reduce risk, right? So if you can get quantification around some of that and how your solution helps in that, I think that really helps. The second, in terms of that metric, is really integration, in my experience, right? So large corporates come with lots of legacy systems and systems that they are going to continue to work with. It's not going to be, as a result of working with you, we're going to throw away existing systems, right? So really, I think the ability to integrate with their existing systems into an existing process, I think that's important. Yeah.
Thank you. And Fiona?
So look, POCs are an interesting beast, right? And for us at Steer, we don't shy away from POCs, right? They are a large investment in time, effort, resource. And we expect that the partner we're hunting has an appreciation and a deep respect of that allocation of resource. In order for any POC to be successful, they need to participate. So they need to articulate what they are trying to solve for, and we will solve for it. What we generally like to do is to say that, well, there are two types of POCs, right? There's a paid POC, and then, there's an investment POC. Paid POC is, sometimes easier to make the decision on go or no go. But the investment POC needs to have an outcome, right? In that, yes, I will, invest 50 man days or 20 man days, whatever the number is. And we, upon achieving the stated goals or milestones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we try not to have it go beyond 5, right? Then it goes from POC into rollout, right? And that's an automatic rollout, and therefore incurs, invoicing and all the other good stuff, right? So it can be done in several ways, but I think for us the successful formula is be crystal clear about what we're solving for. The partner needs to participate in that POC, and we agree on what the milestones or, what the, what the wins are and what it means, whether it means a rollout, whether it means we go back and iterate. But having this clear upfront ensures that you don't end the day in tears, right?
I think I very, very much resonate with what you're saying. So that's a great segue into maybe our last question, which is, and maybe a good problem to have, how do you scale, new solutions and new technologies within a large organization? What are some of the processes or tips that you could give, to other startups or even corporates in the audience? Maybe, Fiona, with you.
Okay. So look, we cheat a little bit, okay? And what do I mean by we cheat a little bit? We always plan to win. And we always plan, even at POC stage, that it is going to roll out and it is going to have to scale. So we do our homework prior. with a very crystal clear understanding of what it will take to scale and what the next phases, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever they are. So for us, it becomes a natural progression that we already publish up front, right? So this is the POC. This is what it's going to look like. If 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 happens, this is what it's going to trigger. These are the resources we're going to need on each side. This is what it's going to mean in either savings or revenue or efficiency or scale for you. And then off we go into a happy marriage, right?
That's fantastic. And Byron, what about you in the fintech space?
Yeah, just like I mentioned before, the POC is easy part and the scale up is the hardest part. So you must sell your solution to the biggest clients in the sector. So after POC, you need to recruit a very strong BD team to do the scale from 1 to 10. If you can't hire someone, then you should choose to do it yourself. Yeah. For me, I'm biggest BD in my company. So every e-commerce or banks or partners, I do it at first and then show it to my BD team. And after that, you can use the product-led growth model to do the scale from 10 to 100. Yeah, that's my experience. Yeah.
All right. And what about you, Joel?
Yeah, so I think in our experience, when it comes to scaling, while we might be a product company, for example, selling a really exciting product, I think sometimes we tend to overlook the peripheral services that support that product. For example, do you have a 24/7 call center, for example, for certain enterprise tech, right? Do you have maintenance? Do you have some kind of help desk or FAQs, right? Typically, we launch main features of product, right? And then it goes out and then there's no help. Nobody knows how to use it. When there's a problem, to simply reset a password, there's some kind of problem with that. So I think the peripheral services is something that I think is equally important as the main product itself. The second thing that I would say around that is in terms of scaling is really being able to, if you can do some level of stress testing of your solution internally before it goes out, that always helps. And that should be with buffers of probably T minus 20%, right, of what kind of volumes you can potentially support, right? I think it also helps, especially this part of the world, to have different sort of linguistic supports when we think about offering that kind of solutions. So even product also needs to be translated, more so the sort of services around there, especially like call centers and things like that, where we have customer support. So I come a lot more from the enterprise tech space, so I'm speaking a lot to that sort of thing where if you're going to get a six-figure sort of contract, people will say, I want 24/7 support, right? I want you to integrate with my ADFS. I want you to integrate with my IAM solutions, or whatever it might be. And all these things are not, your product doesn't do that. People around the product do that, right? So you need those sort of resources around it, yeah.
All right. I think with that, let's just do one last takeaway for the next corporate startup collaboration. What should be the headline? One thing that they should keep in mind. Byron?
All right. I think my advice is to find some pinpoints in a certain area, which is real, common, frequent, and big enough to be worth spending years of hard working to fix it. When you find some pinpoints just like that, you are 50, 100 successful.
Fantastic. Joel?
Yeah, I think for pains, try to find one that's big enough for people to make a decision about, right? There are a lot of pains that are good to have, and a lot of solutions actually, a lot of products actually start with that sort of pain points. But as you understand the customer value chain and their journeys, try to move downwards, actually, not upwards, right? Towards where it might seem like it's a really silly thing to solve for, or even something simplistic. But if that's the starting point, I think listen more and be willing to adapt, yeah.
Right, and Fiona?
Wow. So look, the whole point of innovation is do things differently, more effectively. So my advice would be fearless, right? Question, break down barriers. Don't be afraid to fail for as long as you're determined to learn from it. And then have breakfast every day.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'd like to give a round of applause to the panelists. I hope everybody in the audience has taken away something from this discussion.
Thank you very much.
Next slide. All right, with that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. That'll be the end of our financial services segment. Right now, I'd like to hand over the mic to Xander to go through the next segment.